This one is a semi-cooperative, asymmetrical card game where players are each going to be playing as different tribes. Each tribe has their own individual benefit, but they also have their own deck of cards representing the people in those tribes. And depending on the tribes that players are playing as, you're going to be taking all those decks and then shuffling them into a single communal deck. The reason that I say this is a semi-cooperative city building game is because players are all individually vying for the most influence, but you're also trying to build the city as a whole, and you're going to be defending against various threats. A really cool aspect of the way the communal deck works is that it's actually going to be split into 3 evenly sized decks, except for one of those decks is actually going to be put on the table face up. This means that anytime that it's your turn to draw a card, you can either draw blindly from either of the 2 decks, or if there is a card that you know you want already face up on that face up deck, you can just go ahead and grab that one instead. I really like this because it does give you some options when drawing a card, and even if the face-up card isn't one that you want, it might be one that you know another player really wants, and you might want to just take that so that they aren't able to get the benefits of that card. And there are ways to completely eliminate cards from the game. The way the game works is that each player has a hand of cards, and then on your turn, you can perform one of 4 possible actions. You can either just take one of your cards and then place it into the shared tableau representing your city. And what's neat about these cards is that they have different effects depending on the cards that you place them adjacent to. This is really cool because each of these cards have their own effects, but those effects can change quite a bit depending on the cards around it. If the card also matches your tribe's color, then that's also going to be helping you gain more influence for the end of the game, because the player who has the most cards of their color out in the tableau at the end is going to be the one with the most influence. But rather than playing a card, you can just choose to activate one of the cards already in play, and you'll be able to perform the unique actions shown on that card. But as I mentioned, there are ways to permanently eliminate cards from the game, and that is one of the options, to discard 1 or more cards from your hand. And this is nice if there aren't any cards that you really want to play, or if you just want to eliminate them completely for the other players. But whenever you do this, you are going to be attracting invaders into the city, which can actually cause all sorts of damage and potentially lose the game for everyone. And this is where the 4th action comes into play, because you can actually spend an action in order to repair buildings that were previously damaged by those invaders, or some other events that may have happened in the game. But one important detail that I didn't mention that happens at the start of your turn is that you're going to be checking the current state of the city and then drawing an event depending on what that state is. If the city's doing great and everyone's happy, then you're going to be drawing a positive event card, which will have positive effects on your city and on you as the player. But if the opposite is true, then you're going to be drawing a negative event card, which can have all sorts of negative effects. You're also going to be checking if an invader card needs to be drawn, which, like I said, depends on whether or not players are discarding cards from their hand. And like I said, these can damage your city or harm your population or resources in various ways. But you really don't want to be drawing these invader or negative event cards too often, because if either of those decks is completely depleted, then all the players lose the game. And you do also lose the game if your city completely runs out of its population, because a city isn't much of a city if there's no one there to live in it. But if you're able to keep your city happy and you're drawing those positive event cards, then the game's going to end as soon as that deck completely runs out. And then it's the player who has the most prestige who wins the game, which is the player with the most of their card type out in that tableau. And if you want to learn more about this game, I will have it linked down below, and of course you can follow along to get notified once it launches.